Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and I direct the Independent Living Research Utilization Program, ILRU, at Tier Memorial Herman. We have an interesting program today, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But before I introduce our guest, I want to first ask you a question, one that we will answer before the end of today's program. That is, for a person in a wheelchair who's living in Houston, how many different modes of transportation might they use to get from one point to another? What are the options for wheelchair users for transportation in our city? We'll answer the question before the end of today's program. Now, please stay tuned. We'll be right back to introduce our guest on Focus on Abilities. This is Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, and I'm eager to introduce you to our guest today. That would be Tina Williams. Tina, thanks for being our guest on Focus today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tina, you are a longtime citizen of Houston.
Correct.
And a former Miss Wheelchair Texas.
That's correct, 2012.
2012. And you're also employed in our community.
I am indeed.
Tina, the disability that you have is called transverse myelitis, correct?
That's correct.
How long have you had that disability?
I've had transverse myelitis since about 1994.
So how old were you when you got is it a disease actually?
I don't know. It's a degenerative nerve disorder. And I was born with rickets, which is a hereditary, where the bones don't get as hard as everyone else's. And after I started to have children, it got worse. And
so before, when you were born, I mean, you were just like any other kid and growing up and...
Well, I wore braces on my legs until I was 5 years old. And the rickets was gone. But after I had children, you know, in the process, they took the nutrients from my bones.
So you grew up, you got married, all without realizing you might at some point have a disability.
Right.
You had how many children?
I have 4.
So you had 4 kids, but then you became disabled as a result of this myelitis.
Correct.
And myelitis, if I remember correctly, has something to do with the nerves actually losing their ability to transmit.
Exactly.
The doctors told you that that was caused by having children?
No, the rickets was caused with the children. It was came back, but the transverse myelitis came along after the rickets kind of kicked in.
So you had the rickets till you were 5, then they went away.
Right.
You had the children, the change in your body chemistry
Correct. That's
caused the rickets to reappear, and then the rickets preceded or actually led to the transverse myelitis. And at that point, then you had to use a wheelchair.
I went from the walker to the wheelchair, yeah.
Wow. How old were you then?
I was about 24.
And how old were your children, your oldest and your youngest?
My children were small. I had children early. I thank God for that.
Well,
but
yeah.
I had my children. My youngest son was, I think, 5 years old.
So, and you were caring for these children
Yes.
with your husband?
Well, never been married, but pretty much myself and my family.
So you and your family were caring for your 4 kids,
Right.
and you're at the same time trying to recover from whatever the experience of illness you had during that transformation.
I just never stopped.
Wow. So, Tina, you say you've never stopped, but you've run into some barriers since you've been disabled, haven't you?
I have indeed, but life goes on.
And now you're employed.
I am.
Full time. You live alone in your own home.
Right.
And your kids spend much time with you?
Okay, they come over and visit, and then they go back home.
You're probably happy about that
I am
sometimes, too.
Yes.
You have any grandkids?
I have 8 grandchildren.
8 grandchildren. Do they ride on your wheelchair?
They do.
They get in your
They
lap?
jump on the back. They jump on the front. And, yeah, they do.
Wow, that's great. Tina, living in Houston with a disability for as many years as you have, how many years did you tell me you were here?
I've been in Houston 46 years.
And during that time, you've probably seen a lot of changes.
There have been many changes.
For the better?
Well, some for the better and some not so much better.
You've had a chance during your lifetime to experience life as a person with and without a disability. Did you find it difficult to adjust?
Yes, I did, because it's a big transition going from one day when you're able to do everything, and it becomes an humbling experience when you have to ask someone to assist you when you are usually the person who assists everyone else.
So the biggest challenge you found was the psychological adaptation, not the physical adaptation.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Tina, what advice would you give to people who have to experience that?
Be patient, because in the delivery, you're trying to transmit to someone else what you need, and they're trying to understand what you're saying. But the mode, in the middle, the misconnection is all in the delivery, in the translation. Whereas you could be saying, I need an apple, and they may be hearing, I need an apple, but what color apple?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not sure because they are so afraid that they're going to hurt you.
So when you ask people for help, you have to be fairly specific about
You really do.
it. Do you travel by airline?
Absolutely.
And do you find the assistance they give you satisfactory?
I haven't had a bad time yet.
But you have to be lifted on and off, and you
Yes.
have to explain very carefully
I do.
how to be lifted.
Well, I transfer.
Okay.
So I said, well, wait, let me do this. I'll do what I can do, and then you can go ahead and do what you need to
Well, I
do.
guess that's part of the issue too. Sometimes people are eager to help you,
Right.
so eager that they don't give you the time you need to do it yourself.
Right.
And
No.
you're safer and probably better off if you can do it yourself.
Exactly.
Tina, I want to visit with you about some of your experiences in Houston.
Okay.
And I also want to visit with you about your experiences, Miss Wheelchair Texas.
Okay.
But we're going to take a break right now.
Okay.
And I want all of you to please stay tuned. More with Tina Williams right after this break from Focus on Abilities. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. We're here today with Tina Williams, former Miss Wheelchair Texas, and also a full-time employee. Tina, the company you work for is Herman Medical Supply.
Herman
right?
Medical Supplies.
And you have a full-time job there. You're a grandmother with 8 grandchildren. You must not have much time to do anything else.
Oh, I do a lot.
So
I do a lot.
let's talk about that. You were the 2012 Miss Wheelchair Texas. That must have been an amazing experience.
It was exciting. I actually was first runner-up, and Mariah was Miss Wheelchair Texas. She went on to win Miss Wheelchair America,
Oh my!
and that's how I got the crown for Miss Wheelchair Texas.
Oh, gee, Monique. So you were in the contest originally. What all kinds of things do you have to do? I mean, do they have a talent contest? Do they have a
There is
essay
no
contest?
talent. It's judged by public speaking, your involvement in the community, your involvement in the disabled community, and how you interact with others.
So when you were in the contest, how many other women were there?
I think there were like 11 or 12.
11 or 12 finalists, and they all had to give speeches, little
Yes.
presentations, and the judges based the outcome on the live speeches as well as you pointed out, community service and so forth.
And we were also asked questions, 2 questions.
Were you disappointed when you were first runner-up?
Well, I was actually happy because the year before I was only Miss Congeniality. And so I was happy to get something.
So it was like a promotion. You figured, well, maybe next year I'll come
Absolutely.
back one more time and go for it.
Absolutely.
But you didn't have to wait till next year, because the woman who won Miss Wheelchair America,
Right.
which promoted you to be Miss Wheelchair
Yay.
Texas. You went around the state and gave lectures, presentations?
I did presentations, lectures. I even judged, dance competition for senior citizens at, they were doing like different line dances. It was so fun.
Okay. Well, that must have been a great experience.
It was great. It was great.
And since then, people, because you're a former Miss Wheelchair Texas, you probably still get called on to do programs.
I really do. I do. It's a busy life.
So here you are, an employee, a mother and a grandmother, former Miss Wheelchair Texas, and also a former member of the Houston Mayor's Commission on Disabilities.
Yes.
You were in that position for 2 years?
For 3 years.
3 years?
3 years.
And during that time, did the commission have any particular big issues come before it?
We had quite a few. We did there was one we did with the mayor when people park in the handicap parking spaces who don't have any type of disability or who just use those services. We assisted in getting the fine raised up to $500.
So before that, people could just abuse those spots, pay a little fine, like equivalent to a parking fee maybe.
Right, a small fine.
And now the fine for parking illegally in a disabled reserved spot is how much?
$500.
$500. Now that should be enough to dissuade people from doing that sort
That's
of thing.
right.
The commission also dealt with issues pertaining to emergency preparedness, didn't they?
We did. We did. Mostly here in Houston, it's the hurricane preparedness, but any type of preparedness, for any type of emergency flooding, fire. We pretty much try to prepare the disabled community.
Now, you've lived in Houston a long time. You surely have experienced some of these hurricanes, at least.
Yes, absolutely.
You have any issues with Katrina, Rita?
No,
Ike?
I left.
Okay.
When they say that a hurricane, that they're sure that it's coming, I leave because I have a power chair, and you're not guaranteed to have power.
So it's really you leave because you're afraid you're going to lose power.
Well, safety, I'd rather be alive, and whether I'm in the dark or not, but I'd rather be alive.
You evacuate yourself with your family. You go to another city, another
Yes.
town, other family members?
Yes.
Where do you go?
We go to, my daughter and I, we go to like East Texas, or we may even just take a vacation or something, but just to get out of harm's way.
Oh, that's very wise. So, Tina, I know that you're actually involved in planning for the annual Emergency Preparedness
I am.
Conference. That's at the George R. Brown Convention Center, I think.
Yeah, it's May the 31st.
And a lot of people will be there talking about some of these issues, a lot of exhibits and so forth. Each year they do that.
Right.
Tina, the one thing that people who have disabilities need to be is prepared, right?
Absolutely.
And prepared means both ready to shelter in place in case something happens where they don't have time to evacuate,
Exactly.
and evacuation otherwise. The other thing I think it's important for people to remember in that evacuation thing is leave before everybody else.
Absolutely. And not get caught up. It's better safe than sorry.
I like your idea of just considering it a vacation. Even if the storm doesn't come, at least you've had a vacation.
Exactly.
Tina, the things you're involved with are very important. They're very time consuming. Do you love them?
I do indeed. I feel like I have to help to open the minds and change the world of the way people look at people with disabilities.
Okay. I want to talk more about changing the world. We'll do that right after this break. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with more in a minute. Tina Williams is our guest on Focus on Abilities today, and we're glad you're watching. Tina, the life in a wheelchair in Houston is manageable. I mean, we've both proved that, I guess.
Right.
Lots of other people too. But one of the most challenging aspects of living with a wheelchair is mobility, not just from point to point within your home or your neighborhood, but around town.
Right.
And I guess in Houston, we're fortunate to have several options. In fact, that was the question I asked at the beginning of the program. How many options does a person really have?
Well, you have your own transportation.
Okay, one personal if you need a wheelchair and you can't transfer out of it, then you need to have an accessible vehicle.
Right.
Many people don't have that because of the expense involved
Right.
and so on. So, but that's one option if a person has personal transportation. What's the second one?
Well, I use MetroLift.
MetroLift, which is operated by Metro.
Right.
People with disabilities are eligible for it. You have to go through a process.
Right.
And once you're declared eligible, how does that work?
Once you declare eligible, you call in advance and tell them you have to have the addresses. You can't say it's on the corner of Walker and Bagby, but you give them a physical address and you schedule the time you want to be picked up or the time your appointment is, and then you schedule the time that you want to leave from there, and they'll have a driver to come out and pick you up and take you from point A to point B, and then vice versa, going back or to wherever you need to go.
Now, we've had MetroLift in Houston since the late 1980s.
Correct.
You used it all that time?
I started to use it in '94.
Well, you must have one of the early ID numbers.
No. Well, I do, yeah.
Okay. And so we've got MetroLift, we've got private transportation.
Yellow cab.
Yellow cab, okay. How many, they have taxis with ramps on them, right?
They do. They do. You just drive right on into the back of the cab.
So you call a taxi just like anybody else.
Well, I have the Helicab app on my phone.
Okay.
And you just tap it. It's an app, and you program it where you want to go, and you make sure you hit wheelchair accessible, and go from there, and they'll come and get you.
Wow. So that's Yellow Cab, and you pay the same fare as anybody else?
I do.
Okay. Well, that's three options.
Well, then there's always the city bus.
The city bus. And Houston was one of the first cities in the United States to have a fully accessible city
They're
bus
all
system.
accessible.
Have you ridden on these new buses lately?
I have.
What do you think?
It's nice. It's nice. If I didn't live where the bus line is on the highway, that makes me really, really scary. I would ride the city bus. But
So you live kind of on the edge of Houston, right?
I do.
Around 1960, I think?
249 in near
249,
1960.
1960. So you're right on the very edge, if I recall right, of the MetroLift service area. They only serve the center city of Houston and then out to the edges with a limited service, right?
Right.
So you're right on the very edge, but you use them to get back and forth to work?
I do. I use them to get everywhere, to work, to church. If I want to go get a bite to eat, or to go visit my children or anyone.
But to use MetroLift, you've got to make a plan a day ahead.
Right.
So if you're just spontaneous and you decide it's been a long day, you want to go have a nice dinner somewhere.
You got to call Yellow Cab.
Okay. And Do you have to wait long?
Well, it depends on the time of day. Sometimes you got to call early in advance, and you can let them know as well. I'm going to be somewhere at 6 o'clock, and it'll work. They'll try really hard to find someone for you.
And then, of course, you've got the bus if you want to get out there on the highway and wait for the bus. But that's a problem living where you do, because there's not
Right.
very much bus service. Once you're downtown, though, you can use the bus to get around.
Yes, yes.
Tina, the having access to the cabs must be important to you as a supplement to the Metro Lift, because it enables you to go things more spontaneously. But
Yeah.
there are also some places you need to get. Your doctor's office is right outside the
Outside.
Metro Lift area.
Oh my goodness. My doctor's office is 1 block away, and it's outside of the Metro Lift service area.
So if you made an appointment to go to your doctor's office, they could drop you a block away.
Right, but there's no sidewalks.
So you couldn't get there anyway. And
Couldn't
furthermore,
get
you
there.
wouldn't have a physical they wouldn't go to the physical address.
They don't go to the physical address,
Uh-huh.
and it's a block away. No sidewalks, straight curb. So I have to use yellow.
But I guess they have to draw the line somewhere, right?
a whole block,
You just wish they'd have drawn it 1 block
one
further.
block away.
But thank goodness you have the taxi.
Yes, yes.
And the fares, I mean, the fares you pay you don't have to pay extra because you have a wheelchair.
No, not at all.
And they just push you up the ramp in the back of the taxi.
Yeah.
I've ridden in them too. Now, there are some new transportation providers coming to town. I think you were testified at a city council hearing about their
Right.
services.
I did.
What were you concerned about?
Because they're giving out, as they say, free rides. And I'd like a free ride. I'm not the only one, because it gets expensive riding in a taxi.
Right. This is like Lyft and Uber, right?
Right. And that means that the free ride is not available to me because I'm in a wheelchair, but it wasn't a choice to be in a wheelchair.
So the solution to that is to require them to provide accessible transportation.
Exactly.
Okay. Tina, I appreciate you being our guest today.
Thank you. I'm so honored. Thank you.
You're a great person, and I really appreciate what you do for our community
Thank you.
and for your family.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for watching Focus on Abilities. We'll be right back now with a closing comment. You've been watching Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, and our guest today has been Tina Williams. Tina is a great example of an individual who lives with a disability, but she doesn't let it affect her life. She's a grandmother and a mother. She works. She's involved in a lot of community activities. Tina is a person who uses our city just like everybody else. But one of the keys to Tina's life, and for me and others with disabilities and who use wheelchairs, is transportation. And we asked at the beginning of the program, what are the 4 modes of transportation that wheelchair users can use in our city? Well, private transportation, if you're lucky enough to have a vehicle that can accommodate you. But then you also have Metro Lift, you have the Metro Bus, and you have Yellow Cab that has accessible vehicles all over the city. Transportation is important for getting back to work, back and forth to work, to visit family members, to get to recreation, and for many other things. It is important for us to have accessible transportation in Houston, and we appreciate you understanding that. This is Focus on Abilities on HTV. Please watch us next time for more.
Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.